Have you ever thought about those moments in sports, those real pivot points? A season that feels like it could, make or break a veteran player's whole career narrative,
Yeah, absolutely.
where their own story just slams right into the team's hopes and dreams. The stakes get incredibly high.
Mm.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly one of those situations, a really high-stakes scenario.
That's right. We're zoning in on Jacksonville Jaguars veteran cornerback Tyson Campbell. And this whole deep dive, it really spins out of one single but very compelling article.
Okay.
It digs into why this upcoming season is just so critical for him, and it does it by weaving together, the hard stats with what the Jaguars' own coaches are saying.
Interesting. Numbers and gut feelings.
Sort of statistical analysis and like on-the-ground observations. So our mission here is really to unpack these two sometimes quite different viewpoints on Campbell and figure out what it all means. For him, yes, but also for the Jags overall.
Okay, let's get into it then. Tyson Campbell, he's the guy right in the middle of this make or break talk. And just to set the scene properly, especially for you listening, maybe you're a huge Jags fan, maybe you're just fascinated by the business side of sports.
Yeah.
There's a big financial piece here.
Oh, yeah.
Campbell's walking into year one of a pretty hefty 4-year extension. The reports say it averages over, $19 million a year?
That's the number, yeah. Over $19 million.
That's a massive show of faith from the team. Huge investment. And with that, naturally comes a ton of pressure on Campbell to perform at that level.
Absolutely spot on. And that phrase make or break or pivotal season, it's not just us adding drama.
Right.
It actually traces back to Dalton Wasserman over at Pro Football Focus, PFF.
Ah, PFF. Okay. So for anyone listening who maybe doesn't follow the analytics side super closely.
Yeah, so PFF, they grade players on basically every single snap. Their coverage grade, which is key here, tries to quantify how good a cornerback is at, covering receivers.
How do they do that? Like, what goes into it?
Yeah. It looks at things like how often they're targeted, how many catches they allow, yards after the catch, pass breakups, all that stuff, measured against how many chances they had. It aims to be an objective measure of pass defense effectiveness.
Gotcha. Objective numbers. So what did Wasserman point out specifically?
Well, Wasserman lays it out pretty starkly. He points to this big comparison. Back in 2022, Campbell posted an excellent 80.7 PFF coverage grade.
80.7. That's pretty elite, right?
Oh, yeah. Definitely top-tier stuff. He was playing lights out. But then, Wasserman highlights that over the last 2 seasons combined, his grade has dropped to a, quote, far more mediocre 60.3.
60.3. Oof. That's quite a dip from over 80.
It really is. It's not just a little blip. It signals a pretty clear decline in his coverage effectiveness based on their metrics. So Wasserman's message is pretty direct. If Campbell wants to justify that big contract, he needs to find that 2022 form again. Simple as that.
Wow. Okay, so that PFF slide is significant, especially with the new contract kicking in. And you mentioned the article ties this to the team, too. It's not just about Campbell in isolation.
No, not at all. And this context is crucial. The Jaguars' defense as a whole unit really struggled in coverage. Last season, they ranked, wait for it, 25th in the NFL in team PFF coverage grade.
25th out of 32.
Exactly, near the bottom. So, you see, Campbell getting back to his best isn't just personal redemption or earning his paycheck.
Right.
It feels like a genuine necessity for the entire Jaguars defense to climb out of that hole and actually compete better overall. You just can't win consistently in this league if your pass coverage is that weak.
Okay, that PFF data really does paint a pretty demanding picture. It's numbers, it's past performance, showing a clear drop-off. But, and this is where these things always get fascinating, how does that square with what's happening inside the building? What are the coaches seeing day to day? Does the source give us any intel from the Jaguars camp, especially after their recent minicamp, say June 2025?
Yeah, and this is where the narrative takes a really interesting turn. Because the feedback from the coaching staff reported right after that minicamp sounds, almost completely different. It's overwhelmingly positive.
Really? Like how positive?
Okay, so defensive coordinator Anthony Campanile, he apparently said he is, and I quote, really, really fired up about everything he's done this offseason.
Really, really fired up. That's strong.
It is. And Campanile didn't just leave it there. He got specific. He praised Campbell because he competed so hard in the practices. Saw him fighting for every rep.
Fighting for reps. Okay. What else?
Whether it was, at the top of the route, right on the line of scrimmage, or in the break area, those key moments for a corner. Campanile also mentioned Campbell is just really trying to play with a lot of detail. Even in individual drills, he called his effort super detailed.
Detail-oriented, that's good.
Yeah, and he finished by calling Campbell an awesome guy to coach and a great person. So you're hearing specific football actions combined with high praise for his attitude and work ethic.
That is a dramatically different tone from the mediocre 60.3 grade, isn't it? It speaks to effort, coachability,
Yeah.
things that don't always pop in the raw stats.
Exactly.
But sometimes you hear that kind of talk and think, well, is it just coach speak? You know, pumping up a guy they just paid a lot of money. Did the head coach, Liam Cohen, say similar things, or was he maybe a bit more measured?
No, he seemed right there with Campanile. Cohen apparently echoed that enthusiasm, saying he was impressed with Tyson. He specifically mentioned seeing Campbell make some really good competitive plays during that minicamp.
Competitive play is good. Yeah. Any specifics on his technique or development?
Yes, actually. Cohen apparently noted that Campbell is, quote, getting more and more comfortable playing with his hands at the line of scrimmage, and also trusting his physicality.
Ah, okay. Press coverage stuff, using his size.
Precisely.
Right.
Which is huge for a corner. It suggests he's maybe becoming more aggressive, more technically sound at disrupting receivers right at the start. Cohen also mentioned his natural gifts, the long arms and good length, perfect for a corner, plus, obviously, the speed and athleticism.
The tools are there. Yeah.
Right. And Cohen wrapped it up saying he's been really pleased with his approach, the way that he's practiced, the way that he's taken coaching. So again, it's not just vague praise. It's about seeing tangible improvement in technique and a positive response to coaching. The coaches seem to believe the process is heading firmly in the right direction.
Even if the results in the PFF grades haven't shown it the last couple of years.
Exactly. That's the disconnect.
So this is really the heart of it, isn't it? Yeah. For you listening, trying to make sense of player performance, what do you do with this? You've got the hard PFF data showing a slump, a need for major improvement. And then you've got these glowing reports direct from the coaches talking about intense effort, detail, technical growth. How do you reconcile those two things? What does this teach us about evaluating players?
It's such a critical question, and honestly, it applies way beyond just football. Think about it. The PFF analysis, it kind of sets the benchmark based on past results and, of course, that huge financial commitment.
Yeah, the money talks.
It does. Analytics often act as, like, lagging indicators. They tell you what did happen. They give you that objective baseline. They highlight where things went wrong or right. They're vital for accountability based on output.
Okay, lagging indicators. Makes sense. What about the coach's view then?
The coach's comments, they offer a different lens. It's more forward-looking, right?
Yeah.
It's emphasizing Campbell's current state, his effort now, his receptiveness to coaching now, the potential they see for him to bounce back this season.
So more like leading indicators of potential.
Kind of, yeah. They're seeing the process, the daily grind, the technical tweaks being made in practice, the attitude, stuff that raw stats might take a while to reflect if they ever fully capture it.
But why would there be such a gap? Is it possible the PFF numbers are missing something? Or, playing devil's advocate, are the coaches maybe being a little too optimistic?
It could be a mix of things. Sometimes a player's grades dip because of stuff analytics don't fully capture. Maybe playing through an unreported injury, maybe a subtle shift in defensive scheme puts them in tougher spots. The article didn't specify those for Campbell, but they're common factors.
Okay.
On the flip side, maybe the coaches are seeing genuine breakthroughs in practice that just haven't consistently shown up under the bright lights of game day yet. It takes time for practice habits to become game reality.
And the coach speak possibility. You mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, that's always there. Coaches want to build confidence, especially in highly paid players.
Yeah.
But the specificity of the praise here from both Campanile and Cohen, hands at the line, trusting physicality, fighting for reps, detail that feels like more than just generic encouragement. It sounds like they're seeing actual concrete improvements. So this make or break season for Campbell, it feels like it's less about just raw talent. Can he flip a switch and hit 80.7 again? And more about, is this intense focus of this fight, this coachability that the staff sees, is that going to translate back into elite on-field production?
Yeah.
It really highlights that tension between the statistical record and the human potential driven by hard work.
That tension. You see that everywhere, don't you? In business, evaluating employees balancing their past metrics with their current effort and growth potential.
Absolutely. It's not just a sports dilemma. For the Jaguars, figuring this out is huge. They placed a massive bet on Campbell. If the coach's optimism proves right, if that offseason work leads to a big on-field rebound, it makes their investment look brilliant, and it could seriously boost their defense.
But if he doesn't bounce back, despite the positive practice buzz.
Then the PFF numbers look pretty predictive, don't they? And the team has some tough questions to answer about that contract and how they weigh stats versus coach feedback in their evaluations. Campbell's season becomes a real case study.
And that really sums up the whole fascinating situation around Tyson Campbell. You've got this immense pressure from the contract and the recent stats showing a dip.
Yeah, the numbers are stark.
But then you have this counter-narrative of intense optimism from the coaches, pointing to his work ethic, his attitude, his development this offseason. It's complex, a real test case for player evaluation.
It absolutely is. Which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought, maybe something to chew on. With those strong endorsements from the coaches and that huge contract signifying belief, will Campbell's competitive fire and physical tools be enough for him to recapture that elite 2022 form?
That's the multi-million-dollar question, literally.
Right. And maybe even bigger picture. What does his journey this year tell us about how we should evaluate performance? How do you balance the cold, hard analytics that tell you what was against the human, on-the-ground insights from coaches who see the daily effort and future potential? It's going to be fascinating to watch unfold, not just for the Jaguars, but for what it teaches all of us about looking beyond just the numbers.